The ring of enemy ships closed to 40,000, and Captain Mara Quint kept her eyes on the one number that mattered, which was not 40,000. It was 11 minutes. 11 minutes until the Vernax ring finished tightening around the human dreadnought Ardent Reach, until the last gaps between their hulls sealed shut, and there was no longer any direction that did not have a Vernax gun pointed down it. The tactical display wrapped the bridge in a sphere of red, and the red was almost solid now, a shell of 40,000 warships, drawn so close together that the gaps between them had stopped looking like gaps and started looking like seams. They had Mara's ship at the center of a sphere they had built out of themselves, and they were still drawing it tighter, and they were doing it the way the Vernax did everything, which was together, all at once, without a single ship out of step. "They are leaving us no lane," said her first officer, a lean man named Aaron Vance, who had the steadiest hands on the ship, and was using them now to grip the rail. "Not one. They have ships above, below, and on every bearing. If we run into a wall." "I see it," Mara said. She did see it. That was the part the Vernax had not counted on, though they counted everything else. They had counted the Ardent Reach as one hull, and they had counted themselves as 40,000, and they had drawn the obvious conclusion, the only conclusion, the conclusion any sane fleet in the galaxy would have drawn. That one was a number you surrounded, and 40,000 was a number you surrounded it with. The Vernax were not cruel about it. They were not even angry. They had simply found a human ship in space they had decided was theirs, and they had done what they always did, which was to bring overwhelming force and apply it evenly from every side until the problem stopped being a problem. The Vernax did not fight wars. They performed subtractions, and the Ardent Reach was a number they intended to subtract. "Calm," Mara said. "Are they still broadcasting the same thing?" "Same thing, Captain. On a loop. All channels." The comm officer, a young woman named Priya Sehgal, did not look up from her board. "It is not a demand to surrender. It is not a warning. It is a countdown. They are telling us how long until the ring is closed. We are at 11 minutes. They are being polite," Vance said, and almost laughed, and did not. It was not politeness. Mara understood it better than that. The countdown was the Vernax being efficient. A closing ring was a thing with a known completion time, and the Vernax shared the completion time the way a careful engineer shares a schedule, so that every one of their 40,000 hulls would fire in the same instant, so that not one shot would be wasted hitting space another shot had already cleared. The countdown was not for the Ardent Reach, it was for the ring. The Vernax were synchronizing. Mara had read every file the Terran Reach held on the Vernax, which was not many files, because few who met the Vernax came back to be filed. What the files agreed on was this: the Vernax were a fleet that thought as one. Not a hive in the old sense, not a single mind wearing 40,000 bodies, but something colder and more practiced. 40,000 ships that had drilled together for so long that they no longer needed to talk to act together. They moved like a single muscle, they fired like a single trigger. They had never, in any record the Reach held, lost a battle, because they had never, in any record the Reach held, fought one fairly. They did not believe in fair. They believed in 40,000 to 1, and they brought it every time, and every time, it had been enough. 11 minutes, Mara said quietly. "They think 11 minutes is how long we have left." "Isn't it?" Vance asked. "No," Mara said. "It is how long they have left." She turned from the red sphere and walked to the center of the bridge, where the deck plating was worn smooth by 100 captains' boots before hers, because the Ardent Reach was not a new ship and had not been built to be one. She was a heavy thing, a long slab of a dreadnought, 3.5 kilometers of layered armor, and old guns and newer guns bolted over the old ones, a ship that had been rebuilt so many times that no one aboard could say with certainty which parts of her were original. The Vernax had scanned her, of course. The Vernax scanned everything, and the scan had told them what scans always told the galaxy about a human warship, which was a list of numbers that added up, on paper, to one ship, and the Vernax had read the list and drawn their ring and started their countdown, because 40,000 against 1 was not a battle, it was a formality. The Vernax had read the list. They had not read the ship. That was the error, and it was the only error they had made, and it was the only error they would need to make. because the list said the Ardent Reach was one hull, and the list was correct, and the list was also the least true thing anyone had ever written about her. "Mr. Vance," Mara said, "sound general quarters. Quietly. I do not want a single light on this ship to change in a way they can read. Let them finish their countdown believing they are closing a ring around a cornered animal." "And what are they actually closing it around, Captain?" Mara watched the red sphere draw tighter, 40,000 hulls moving as one, 11 minutes from a ring with no gaps, certain they had done the math, certain they had brought enough. "A loaded gun," she said. "That, they have very kindly agreed to stand all the way around." The general quarters order moved through the Ardent Reach, the way Mara had asked, without a single change a Vernax sensor could catch. No new lights, no spike in her power signature, no reactor surge, no weapons charge that would register across the closing dark as anything but a cornered ship trying not to die. Inside the hull, 840 crew went to their stations in near silence, their boots quiet on the worn plating, their voices low. They had drilled this. They had drilled it more times than the Vernax had ever drilled their ring, because the Vernax drilled to win, and the humans of the Ardent Reach drilled because they had been losing slowly for a long time and had learned, the hard way, exactly what it cost to be unready. Mara watched the count fall. 10 minutes. "Tactical," she said. "Talk to me about the ring." The tactical officer was an older man named Curtis Hale, gray at the temples, who had served on the Ardent Reach longer than anyone else aboard, and had been at 3 of the battles the Terran Reach did not like to talk about. He did not look up from his board. "It is a good ring, Captain," he said. "I will give them that. Even spacing, even ranges, overlapping fields of fire. They have left no blind spot, and no soft spot. If they fire all at once, the way I think they mean to, every point on our hull takes the same weight at the same instant. There is no thin part of the wall to push through, because they built the wall to have no thin part." "So we do not push through the wall," Mara said. "No," Hale agreed. "We do not push through the wall." It was the oldest lesson the Ardent Reach knew, and the Vernax, for all their drilling, had never learned it, because they had never needed to. When a fleet is always the larger fleet, it never has to learn what the smaller one knows. And what the smaller one knows is this: a wall built to face inward, evenly, from every side, is a wall that has agreed not to move. The Vernax had spent the last 20 minutes turning 40,000 ships from a fleet into a structure. A fleet can dodge, a structure cannot. The moment they closed the last gap, the Vernax would stop being 40,000 things that could each react and become one enormous thing that could only hold its shape. And a thing that can only hold its shape is a thing that can be hit in a way that breaks the shape. The Vernax had surrounded the Ardent Reach so completely that they had, without knowing it, lined up 40,000 of their own hulls, so that every shot the human ship fired outward would find one of them, and every shot they fired inward, if it missed, would find another of their own on the far side of the ring. They had built a firing range and put themselves on both ends of it. They had been so careful to leave the Ardent Reach no way out that they had forgotten the oldest rule of cornering a dangerous animal, the rule every human child learns and no Vernax ever had. You always leave it a way out, because a thing with a way out runs, and a thing with no way out turns around. 9 minutes, Priya said. Mara walked the length of her bridge once, slowly, the way she always did before the worst of it, letting the crew see her unhurried. 840 people, and not one of them did not know the number outside. 40,000. It was a number that should have broken a crew, and it had not broken this one, and Mara knew why. It was not courage, exactly, though there was that. It was that every person on the Ardent Reach had already done the same arithmetic she had, and had arrived at the same place, which was that the Vernax had made a mistake, and that the mistake was about to come due, and that they were the ones who got to collect. "Listen to me," Mara said, and she said it to the whole ship, on the internal channel, her voice level. "They have us surrounded. I want you to hear me say it, because they are right. We are surrounded. There is no lane out. They have brought 40,000 ships to kill one of ours, and they have done it well. And in 9 minutes, they will close the last gap, and they will be very proud of the ring they have built. And then they are going to learn the thing the galaxy keeps having to learn about us. which is that we do not measure a fight by how many of them there are. We measure it by how many of them are in range, and right now, every single one of them is in range, all 40,000. They did that. We just have to thank them for it. She let that settle. Then she turned back to the red sphere, to the wall of hulls drawing tight around her ship, 8 minutes from complete, and she felt the old cold steadiness come down over her the way it always did, the calm that was not the absence of fear but the mastery of it. "Mr. Hale," she said, "when the ring is closed, and not 1 second before, I want a full firing solution on every hull within 30 degrees of our dorsal arc. We are going to give them what they came for. We are just going to give it to them in the order we choose." "Aye, Captain," Hale said, and for the first time that hour, the old man smiled. The ring closed at exactly the time the Vernax had promised, and in the half-second after it closed, before they could fire, the Ardent Reach fired first. It did not fire the way the Vernax expected, because the Vernax expected a cornered animal, and a cornered animal lashes out in every direction at once, wild and even and weak. The Ardent Reach did the opposite. Every gun she had, every battery, every launcher, the old ones and the newer ones bolted over them, fired into a single 30-degree wedge of the ring at the same instant. 840 people pulling one trigger, 3.5 kilometers of Dreadnought, putting the whole of itself behind one punch, aimed at one part of the wall. The wall did not have a thin part. Hale had said so. But a wall does not need a thin part if you put everything you have into one spot, and the Ardent Reach put everything she had into one spot. The 30-degree wedge of the Vernax ring, 200 and some hulls drawn up close and proud of their spacing, took the full weight of a human dreadnought meant to trade blows with a fleet, and the wedge came apart. Not damaged. Where there had been 200 Vernax ships holding a perfect arc, there was now a ragged hole punched clean through the shell, a gap in the sphere of red, and through the gap, for the first time since the ring began to close, the open dark. "Hole in the ring," Hale said, his voice tight and fast. "Dorsal arc, bearing 015. They are not closing it. They cannot. Their spacing was too tight. The ships next to the gap cannot move into it without breaking their own firing solutions." "Helm," Mara said. "Take us through it." The Ardent Reach surged. She was not a fast ship, not for her size, but she did not need to be fast. She needed to be moving when the rest of the ring fired, and she was. 40,000 Vernax guns fired in the same instant, exactly as drilled, a single coordinated volley meant to converge on the spot at the center of the sphere, where a cornered ship should have been. The ship was not at the center of the sphere anymore. The ship was driving through the hole in the wall, and 40,000 shots converged on empty space, and on each other. The Vernax had built their ring so tight, aimed it so evenly inward, that the volley meant for the Ardent Reach passed through the space she had just left, and kept going, into the far side of the ring, into their own hulls. The synchronization that made them deadly made the miss catastrophic. They did not fire 40,000 shots at a human ship. They fired 40,000 shots at the inside of their own sphere, and the human ship was no longer inside it. Mara watched the red sphere convulse. Whole arcs of it flickered and went dark, as Vernax ships took the weight of their own ring's fire. Friendly hulls struck by friendly guns at point-blank range across a closing sphere. The Vernax had never fought a thing that moved at the right instant, because nothing they had ever surrounded had understood that the ring was the weapon, and the timing was the lock, and that a lock can be picked. "Report," Mara said. "They lost ships, Captain," Hale said, and there was wonder in his voice he was trying to keep out of it. "To their own volley. I am counting. It is a lot. Over 1,000, maybe 2. And the ring? Broken. They are reforming, but they have to do it from scratch, and they have to do it around a moving target now, which is a much harder problem than the one they solved before. They are not used to a hard problem, Captain. Look at them. They are slow." Mara looked, and it was true. The Vernax, who moved as one muscle, were used to the muscle pulling in a known direction. Now the direction had changed, and the muscle had to learn a new shape, while a human dreadnought drove out through the wound in its side and turned, in the open dark beyond the ring, to face it. That was the thing the Vernax had never had to do. They had never had to reform. They had never had a ring break, because no ring had ever broken. because nothing they surrounded had ever turned around. The whole of their art was the closing of the ring. They had no art for what came after, because there had never been an after. There was an after now. "Captain," Vance said, "they are reforming the ring. They are going to try again. They have 38,000 ships. They can afford to." "They can afford to lose ships," Mara said. "They cannot afford to lose the count. Watch." She had read the files, the few files, and the one thing the files had been able to learn about the Vernax, the one crack in the cold machine, was this. The Vernax did not improvise. Their strength was the drill, and the drill was a fixed thing, and a fixed thing assumes the world holds still. The Vernax had one plan, perfected over a span no human record could measure, and the plan was the ring. When the ring worked, nothing else mattered. When the ring did not work, the Vernax did not have a second plan. They had the ring, again, slightly adjusted. They were, for all their numbers, a fleet that knew exactly one thing, and they were about to try that one thing against a captain who had already beaten it once and was watching them set up to do it again. "They are closing a second ring," Hale confirmed. "Wider this time. More careful spacing. They learned from the volley, Captain. They are angling their guns so a miss does not cross the sphere. They are not stupid." "No," Mara agreed. "They are not stupid. They are just slow to be anything but what they are. Helm, do not let them close it. Keep us moving along the inside edge of their formation. I do not want to be at the center of anything they build. I want to be on the rim, where I can pick which part of their wall I am standing next to." The ardent reach ran the rim. She did not flee, and she did not charge. She stayed at the inner edge of the reforming ring, 3.5 kilometers of Dreadnought sliding along the inside of a wall of enemy hulls, close enough that the Vernax could not fire across the sphere at her, without hitting the part of the wall she was beside, far enough that she was never at the heart of any solution they tried to draw. Every time the Vernax began to close a ring, Mara moved the ardent reach to its edge, and the Vernax had to start the ring over, because their whole method depended on the target being in the center, and the target would not go to the center. It was, Mara thought, like watching someone try to wrap their hands around a wasp. Every time they cupped their palms, the wasp was already on the back of one hand, and they had to open up and try again, and every time they opened up, the wasp stung. The ardent reach stung. She ran the rim and she fired as she went, never the wild spray of a cornered animal, always the concentrated weight of a ship that chose its target, and every concentration fell on the section of wall she happened to be passing, and every section she passed came apart. The Vernax bled in the way a thing bleeds when it has never bled before, which is to say, it did not understand that it was bleeding. It kept trying to complete the motion that was killing it, kept reaching to close the ring, and every reach gave the ardent reach another stretch of wall to run her guns along. "Counting still," Hale said. 35,000. 34. "They are losing them faster than they can reform, Captain. They have not landed a hit on us. Not one. 40,000 ships and they have not scored a single hit, because every time they line up the shot, we are not where the shot is going." "How is the hull?" Mara asked, because she did not let herself believe a report that good without checking the price of it. "The hull is fine," Vance said. "We are taking some splash from near misses. Armor is shrugging it off." "Captain, they are not hurting us. They genuinely are not hurting us. I have never seen anything like it." Mara had. She had read about it. She had drilled for it. But she had never, in all her drilling, let herself believe it would be this clean. And she did not let herself believe it now, because the moment a captain believed a fight was won, was the moment the fight remembered it was not. "Do not slow down," she said. "Do not get clever. They have 34,000 reasons to get lucky once. We are not going to give them the once. Mr. Hale, keep walking our fire down their line. Mr. Vance, watch their pattern. The instant they try something that is not a ring, I want to know. Because sooner or later, even a thing that only knows one trick learns to be afraid, and a frightened thing tries something new. And if they try something new," Vance asked, "then they will be doing the one thing they have never practiced," Mara said, "against a ship that practices everything. Steady on the rim. Make them spend the count." The Vernax spent the count. 32,000. 30,000. The red sphere on the bridge display, which had begun the hour as an almost solid wall, grew thinner with every pass of the ardent reach, gaps opening in it that the Vernax could no longer close fast enough, whole arcs gone dark where the human Dreadnought had run her guns along the line. And still the Vernax reached, again and again, to close a ring, because the ring was the only thing they knew, and the ring was the thing that was killing them, and they could not stop reaching for it any more than a hand can stop being a hand. And then, at 30,000 ships, the Vernax did the thing Mara had warned them they would do. They stopped reaching for the ring. "Captain," Vance said sharply, "pattern change. They are pulling back. The whole formation. They are opening the distance." "Show me." The red sphere on the display loosened. All at once, 30,000 hulls drawing away from the ardent reach in every direction. The wall that had pressed in for an hour, suddenly retreating into the dark. For a single breath, it looked like a rout. It was not a rout. Mara knew it was not a rout, because the Vernax did not rout, and because the retreat was as even and as coordinated as the ring had been. 30,000 ships pulling back exactly together, opening exactly the same distance, holding exactly the same shape. "They are not running," she said. "They are reloading the trick. They learned that close is bad. Close is where our concentrated fire eats them, and their crossfire eats themselves. So they are going long. They are going to stand off at maximum range, all of them, and fire from a distance where a mist does not cross the sphere, and where we cannot run our guns along their line, because their line is too far to reach. They are turning the ring into a noose and loosening it so they can squeeze without cutting themselves." "That is smart," Hale said grimly. "That is actually smart. At that range they can fire all 30,000, and the only thing in the volley is us. No friendly fire, no rim for us to hide on. Just 30,000 guns and one ship and a lot of empty space between." "It is smart," Mara agreed. "It is the second smart thing they have ever had to think of, and they thought of it under fire, which means they are afraid, which means they are guessing. A drilled fleet does not guess well. Mr. Hale, how long until they finish opening the distance and fire?" 4 minutes. Maybe 5. They are being careful. They have been hurt, and they do not want to be hurt again, so they are taking their time getting the long ring exactly right. 4 minutes, Mara said. "Good. That is more time than we need." "For what, Captain?" Vance asked. Mara looked at the display, at the 30,000 hulls drawing back into a great hollow sphere with the ardent reach alone at its empty center, and she felt the shape of the next move arrive in her, the way the shapes always did, clean and cold and complete. "They have made the same mistake twice," she said. "They think the danger is the distance between us and them. Close, we ate them, so they went long. But the danger was never the distance. The danger was always that they fight as one thing, and one thing can only be in one state at a time. When they were close, they were all close. Now that they are going long, they are all going long. They have never once, in all their drilling, been in 2 states at the same time, because they have never had to be. So we are going to make them be." She turned to Hale. "When they finish opening the distance, the instant before they fire, I want every gun we have on the nearest segment of their long ring. Not spread, concentrated. The same punch we threw at the start. We are going to put a hole in the long ring exactly the way we put a hole in the short one, and we are going to drive through it before they can fire, and the instant we are through, we are not going to run. We are going to turn, and put our back to the open dark, and our guns on the inside of their sphere, from outside it." Vance saw it first. From outside, their long range works against them. 30,000 ships all aimed at a center we are no longer in, and we are behind the nearest arc of them, firing into their backs, and any of them that turns to face us is out of formation, and the moment one is out of formation, the whole shape they spent 4 minutes building is wrong. "They built a sphere to shoot inward," Mara said. "A sphere has no good answer to a thing standing outside it. We just have to get outside it before they fire, and they have very kindly given us 4 minutes and a nearest arc to punch through. Helm, stand by. Mr. Hale, firing solution on the nearest segment. Everyone else, hold. We move on my mark, and not before, because if we move early they reform, and if we move late they fire. And there is exactly 1 instant between those two, and we are going to live in it." The bridge went quiet. The red sphere on the display swelled. The Vernax opening the distance. 30,000 hulls sliding outward into the long ring. Careful, even, certain that distance was the answer, because close had been the question. 3 minutes. The crew of the Ardent Reach watched the wall recede, and held their fire, and held their breath. 840 people balanced on the edge of a single instant, and Mara watched the Vernax do exactly what a drilled thing does, which is the same correct move, perfectly, every time, even when the move has stopped being correct. They are almost set, Hale said. Long ring closing, spacing good. They are angling guns inward. 2 minutes to their volley. Captain, they are committed. They cannot pull this back now without starting over. And they will not start over again. They are too afraid to. The next thing they do is fire. Then the next thing we do is not be there, Mara said. Helm, on my mark. Mr. Hale, the nearest segment, mark. The Ardent Reach fired everything she had into one arc of the long ring, the same single devastating punch that had opened the first hole, and the long ring, for all its careful distance, came apart at the point of the punch exactly as the short ring had, because a wall is a wall whether it stands near or far, and a wall built to face inward has no defense against a fist aimed at one spot of it. A hole opened in the receding sphere, and the Ardent Reach, already moving, drove through it. 3.5 kilometers of Dreadnought, passing out of the trap, a half second before 30,000 Vernax guns fired into the center where she was supposed to be. They fired. 30,000 shots, perfectly timed, perfectly aimed at the empty heart of their long ring. And the long ring, unlike the short one, was too far apart for the volley to cross and hit the far side, so the shots simply went through the empty center and out into the dark beyond. 30,000 rounds spent on nothing. The most expensive miss in the history of a fleet that had never missed. And the Ardent Reach was outside the sphere now, behind the nearest arc, and she turned, and she put the open dark at her back, and her guns on the backs of the Vernax, and she began to fire into the inside of their formation, from the one place a sphere built to shoot inward could not answer. They are turning to face us, Vance said. The nearest arc. They are coming about. Of course they are, Mara said. And every one that turns to face us is a ship that has left the formation, and every gap in the formation is a place the next concentration goes. Mr. Hale, walk it. They have to choose now. They can hold the sphere and let us shoot their backs, or they can turn to face us and break the sphere. Either way, they lose the one thing that ever made them dangerous, which is being one thing. Make them choose, and punish whichever they pick. The Vernax chose, and they chose wrong. Because a thing that knows one trick cannot choose right. Part of the formation turned to face the Ardent Reach, breaking the sphere, and part of it held position trying to keep the sphere whole, and the two parts pulled against each other, and the great drilled muscle that had never once been in two states at the same time, was now in two states at the same time, and it tore. The coordination that had made 40,000 ships act as one trigger required all 40,000 to want the same thing in the same instant. And now half of them wanted to turn, and half of them wanted to hold, and the synchronization that was their whole strength shattered along the seam between the two halves. They are coming apart, Captain, Hale breathed. Not the ships, the fleet. The thing that made them a fleet. They are still 30,000 hulls, but they are not one thing anymore. They are 30,000 things, and half of them are in each other's way. Then, we are no longer fighting 40,000, Mara said. We are fighting one, 30,000 times, and we are very good at fighting one. Steady, all of you. Do not get loud. Do not get proud. A wounded animal this big can still land a blow if we hand it one. Do not hand it one. Run the rim, walk the fire, and let the count fall. On the bridge, Priya Segal looked up from her comm board for the first time in an hour, and her voice was strange. Captain, she said. The broadcast changed. The countdown? It stopped. The countdown stopped a while ago. They are sending something new now, on all the same channels. The way they sent the count. It is not in our language. It does not seem to be aimed at us at all. I think they are talking to each other. I think we are just close enough to hear it. Can you read any of it? A little? The Reach has a partial key from the last contact. It is not a battle order, Captain. Battle orders we logged. This is not a battle order. The closest the key can give me is a single phrase, repeated, over and over, across the whole formation. Priya swallowed. It comes out as, "This is not in the drill." The bridge was silent. Mara understood it then, completely. The whole shape of the thing she was fighting. The Vernacs were not afraid of dying. A drilled thing does not fear its own death, because the drill accounts for losses. The drill plans the acceptable subtractions. What the Vernacs were broadcasting across 30,000 hulls, in the cold language of a fleet that thought as one, was something a drilled thing had perhaps never had to say before. The worst sentence a creature that lives by the plan can be made to speak. This is not in the drill. They had a plan for losing ships. They had no plan for losing the plan. "Keep listening," Mara said quietly, "and note the time. Someone at the Reach is going to want to know the exact moment the thing that subtracted 1,000 fleets first said out loud that it did not know what was happening. That moment is now. Mark it." "Marked, Captain," Priya said. The count fell. The ardent Reach, whole and unhurt, ran the broken sphere of the Vernacs. And the Vernacs, who had never learned what to do when the ring failed, who had no second plan and no third, who had been one perfect thing for longer than humanity had kept records, and were now 30,000 frightened things tangled in each other's lanes, could not stop her, and could not catch her, and could not, for all their numbers, land the single hit that would have changed anything. The thing that had subtracted every fleet it ever met had finally met a number it did not know how to take away, and the number was 1, and the 1 was not afraid. The Vernacs tried one last thing, and it was the most dangerous thing they did all day, because it was the first thing they did that they had not drilled. "Captain," Hale said, "a group is breaking off. About 2,000 hulls. They are not reforming the sphere. They are massing. All on one bearing. All behind one another. A column. Deep and narrow. They are going to ram a spear of 2,000 ships straight down our throat." Mara studied it. The Vernacs, who had only ever known the ring, who had spent the whole battle reaching to close a circle that would not stay closed, had finally, under the pressure of their own fear, invented something new. It was crude. It was the idea of a thing that had never improvised, reaching for the simplest violence it could imagine, which was to stop trying to surround the human ship, and instead, to throw a solid mass of hulls at it, 2,000 deep, and trust that no ship could survive being hit by 2,000 ships in a line. It was, Mara thought, almost touching. They had learned. They had learned the wrong lesson. But they had learned. And that was more than the Vernacs had ever had to do before. And it made them, for the first time all day, genuinely unpredictable. "That spear is a problem," she said aloud, because she did not lie to her crew. "If it lands, even our armor does not shrug off 2,000 hulls. We do not let it land." "We cannot punch through 2,000 ships stacked in a line, Captain," Hale said. "That is the one shape our concentration does not beat. A wall we hole, a line coming at us is already a hole, pointed at us, with 2,000 ships behind the point. Then we do not punch through it," Mara said. "We make it punch through itself. Helm, I want us moving across the spear's path, not along it. Perpendicular, full ahead. Mr. Hale, the instant we cross in front of the spear's leading ships, all guns, but not at the spear, at the empty space just ahead of its nose." "At the empty space," Hale repeated. "At the empty space. Trust me, Mr. Hale. They have 2,000 ships committed to a single straight line at full acceleration. A thing like that cannot turn. It cannot stop. It can only go where it is already going. So we are going to put a wall of fire across where it is already going. Not to hit the ships, to hit the space. And the spear is going to fly into our fire, because it has no choice. Because it committed. Because committing is the only idea it has ever had." She let the bridge sit with the choice for the space of one breath, and then she gave the order. Because a captain who hesitates in front of a thing that improvises, teaches it that hesitation works. "Helm, perpendicular crossing, full ahead, on my mark. Mr. Hale, your guns track the empty space, not the ships. The spear will bring the ships to the space for you. You only have to be patient enough to shoot where they will be, and not where they are." "That is a hard shot, Captain," Hale said. "It is the easiest shot you will fire all day," Mara said. "A thing that cannot turn is a thing whose future you already know. We are not aiming at a fleet, Mr. Hale. We are aiming at a fact." Mara had read the files. The few files, and the one thing every account of the Vernacs agreed on, the thing the survivors said before they were filed, was that the Vernax never broke off. Whatever they committed to, they finished, because the drill said finish, and the drill was all they had. They had committed 2,000 ships to a straight line, and Mara was betting 840 lives that they would fly that line into a wall of fire rather than do the one thing they had never practiced, which was to flinch. 2,000 ships, Vance said, watching the column form. Captain, do we even have enough fire to wall off that much space? We do not have to wall off all of it, Mara said. We have to wall off the part the nose is flying into, and the nose is flying into one place, because a spear has one tip. They have done our aiming for us. They have taken 2,000 ships and pointed every one of them at a single point in space and told them to be there at the same instant. All we have to do is be unkind to that point. Mr. Hale, you have fired harder shots at smaller targets in worse light. This one is coming to you in a straight line and ringing a bell the whole way. A few of the bridge crew laughed, low and short, the laugh of people who are afraid and have decided to be brave about it, and Mara was glad to hear it, because a crew that can still laugh is a crew that still has somewhere left to go. The ardent reach cut across the path of the spear. The spear did not turn. Mara had been right. 2,000 Vernax ships, committed to their line, accelerating, came on straight and true and proud, and Hale filled the space ahead of them with everything the Dreadnought had. A wall of fire laid across the dark in front of the spear's nose, and the spear flew into it. The leading ships hit the wall of fire and came apart, and the ships behind them, too close and too fast and unable to stop, flew into the wreckage of the ones in front, and the spear that was meant to skewer the ardent reach skewered itself, 2,000 ships piling into the ruin of their own leading edge, a column of fire and tumbling hulls that the human ship had not so much destroyed as simply stood aside from and let destroy itself. The spear is gone, Hale said, and his voice had gone very quiet. All of it. They flew the whole thing into our fire and into each other. They never turned. They never broke off. They just kept coming, until there was nothing left to come. No, Mara said. They could not turn. Turning was not in the drill, and they had used up the one new idea they had on the spear itself. They had nothing left to improvise with. Note that too, Mr. Segal. They invented one new thing today, and it killed 2,000 of them, and now they will be more afraid of new things than ever. We have taught them that improvising is fatal. That is the worst thing we could possibly teach a fleet that needs to start improvising to survive. The bridge was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that is too full to fill, and then Vance said the thing they were all thinking. Captain, how many are left? Hale checked, counting. The sphere, the spear, the volleys they spent on themselves. They came with 40,000. They are at 19,400 and some. They have lost more than half their fleet, and they have not landed a single hit on us. Not one, Captain. In all of it, we have not lost a man. We have not breached a deck. The armor is scored, and that is the whole of the damage. And they are at 19,000, and falling. 19,000. It was still, Mara reminded herself, a number that should have ended the ardent reach 100 times over. 19,000 warships against one was a slaughter in any sane accounting, and the accounting was not sane, because the Vernax had built it that way, had made themselves one enormous thing that could only do one trick, and the trick was broken, and a broken trick does not get better with more ships behind it. The Vernax had 19,000 hulls and no idea what to do with them, and the Ardent Reach had one hull and had known exactly what to do with it since before the first ring closed. Are they still broadcasting? Mara asked. Yes, Captain, Priya said, but it changed again. It is shorter now. The same phrase, but only one word of it repeats. The key gives me the word as withdraw. They are saying withdraw. Are they withdrawing? No. That is the strange part. They are saying it, all of them, on every channel, but they are not doing it. I think, Priya hesitated. Captain, I think the part of them that is saying withdraw, and the part of them that is still trying to fight, cannot agree, and the drill never had a step for disagreeing, so they are stuck. They are saying the word, and not doing the thing, over and over, all 19,000 of them at once. Mara looked at the broken sphere on her display, 19,000 hulls that had stopped being a fleet and become a crowd, saying a word they could not bring themselves to obey, paralyzed by the one thing a creature of pure coordination cannot survive, which is the loss of agreement. She felt no triumph. She had stopped feeling triumph somewhere around the time the spear flew into itself. What she felt was the cold, clear pity of a professional watching an amateur die of its own certainty. Mara had seen crews break before, human ones, in the bad years, and she knew the sound of it, the way a fighting force stops being a force and becomes a number of people who are each, suddenly, alone. She had never expected to hear that sound from the Vernax, who had no aloneness in them, who had only ever been one thing. But that was the sound on Priya's channels now, translated through the partial key into the flat word, withdraw, repeated past all meaning, and under it, fainter, other fragments the key could only half catch. Fragments that did not sound like orders at all. They sounded like ships asking each other what to do. They had never had to ask before, the drill had always known, and now the drill did not know, and 19,000 hulls were discovering, all at once and in front of one another, that without the drill, they had never learned how to think. It should have been the end. By every law of war Mara had ever been taught, a fleet that loses its coordination loses the battle, and a fleet that loses half its hulls and all of its nerve does not come back. She had stopped feeling triumph, but she had begun, against her own discipline, to feel something almost like safety, the sense that the worst was behind her ship. "Captain," Priya said, and something in her voice made the whole bridge turn. The broadcast stopped. All of it. Every channel. All at once. They went silent. "Silent how?" Mara asked. "Silent like the count was silent before the ring closed," Priya said. "Silent like they are synchronizing again. But there is something else. There is a new signal under the silence. One source. Very deep in the formation. Behind everything else. And it is strong, Captain. It is the strongest thing out there by far, and it has not made a sound all day until now." "Mr. Hale," Mara said. "Find it." Hale found it, and when the display resolved the source, the bridge went quiet in a new way. Behind the 19,000 surviving hulls, at the very heart of the broken sphere, a shape had been hidden the whole battle, screened by the bodies of the lesser ships, dark and silent and waiting. It was not a warship. It was larger than any warship Mara had ever seen, larger than a station, a vast slow disk of a hull that dwarfed the Vernax warships, clustered around it, the way the Ardent Reach dwarfed a lifeboat. It had taken no part in the fighting. It had not fired a shot. It had simply hung at the center of the drill and let the drill happen, and now, as the drill failed, it had begun, for the first time, to move. The Ardent Reach turned to face it, 3.5 kilometers of human Dreadnought coming about to put her prow toward a hull that made her look, for the first time all day, small. Mara felt the change in the bridge, the way the wonder of the last hour drained out of the crew and the old cold readiness came back, harder now, because they had thought they were near the end, and they had been wrong. "How big?" she asked. 40 kilometers across the disk, Captain," Hale said. "Give or take, it masses more than the entire rest of the surviving fleet put together, and it is generating a field I have never seen before, all around itself, and reaching out into the surviving hulls. Captain, I think that field is the drill. I think that thing does not order the fleet. I think it is the fleet, and the 19,000 are just its hands, and we have spent all day cutting off its fingers." "Then it has been fighting us with its fingers," Mara said, "and losing, and watching, and learning, from a seat where nothing we did could reach it. 12 hours from now, the Reach is going to ask me why I did not run when I had the chance, while the Armada was paralyzed and the lane was open. And the answer is going to be that I did not know that was there. None of us did. It hid behind its own fleet and let 20,000 of its ships die to keep us from looking at it too closely. A thing that will spend 20,000 hulls just to stay hidden is not a thing you turn your back on, so we are not going to turn our back on it. We are going to make it show us everything it has, here, now, where we can see it. Because the one place I will not fight that thing is a place where I cannot see it coming." "That is what was running them," Vance said slowly. "Not a flagship, not a commander. That. The whole fleet drilled as one, because that thing was the one. It was the mind, and the 19,000 were the body, and we spent the whole day fighting the body, while the mind sat in the back and watched. And now the body is broken," Mara said. so the mind is going to do the fighting itself. She watched the great disk come on, slow and certain, the surviving Vernax hulls peeling away from it to clear its path, and she understood that the real battle had not started yet, that everything before now had been the Vernax fighting with their hands, and that this was the Vernax, at last, deciding to fight with their head. She did not say the rest of what she was thinking, which was that a thing willing to lose 20,000 of its own bodies to protect its head had a patience that frightened her more than any number of guns. The Vernax warships had been brave in the way machines are brave, which is to say not at all, only obedient. But the disk had done something no machine, and no coward, and no ordinary commander would have done. It had watched its own fleet die, ship by ship, for an entire battle, and had not lifted a hand to save a single one of them, because saving them would have meant revealing itself a moment before it was ready. That was not obedience. That was a cold and total will, the will of something that thought of 19,000 warships, the way Mara thought of a magazine of shells, and Mara understood that whatever she had beaten so far, she had not yet met the Vernax. She had only met their weapons. She was about to meet the hand that held them. All stations. The first part of this fight is over. It was the easy part. Whatever that thing is, it has been studying us all day from the safest seat in the formation, and unlike its ships, it learns. Mr. Hale, I want everything we have on that disk, and I want to know the moment it does anything that is not in any drill. Because I promise you, that thing has more than one trick. Steady, ardent reach. We are about to meet the part of the Vernax that was always the danger. She had spent her whole career learning that the most dangerous enemy is never the one with the most guns, but the one with the most patience. And she had a feeling, watching the great disk come on, that she was about to be proven right in the most expensive way the galaxy could arrange. The disk fired once, and the shot was nothing like the shots of its fleet. It did not throw 40,000 small things in a coordinated volley. It threw one enormous thing, a single lance of pale force that crossed the dark between the disk and the ardent reach in a heartbeat, and struck the Dreadnought full on the prow. The whole ship rang. For the first time all day, the ardent reach was hit, truly hit, and the bridge lurched, and the lights stuttered, and somewhere below a deck announced itself with the long groan of armor taking a blow it had not been certain it could take. Damage, Mara said, and her voice did not change, because the whole crew was listening to her voice for permission to be afraid, and she did not give it. Forward armor, Captain, Vance said, fast, scanning. Deep score, no breach. It held. Barely, but it held. That was one shot, and it did more to us than the entire armada managed all day. Below the bridge, on every deck, the crew of the Ardent Reach felt the difference too. For an hour, they had fought a thing that could not touch them, and there is a strange ease in that, a danger of growing careless, of starting to believe the armor is magic. The big lance had burned that belief away in a single strike. Now they work their stations the way people work when they have remembered, all at once, that they can die. Faster, quieter, with a focus that the easy hour had let them set down. Mara felt the ship tighten around her like a fist closing, and she was glad of it. A crew that has just been reminded of its own mortality is a crew that does not make mistakes. Then we have finally met something that can hurt us, Mara said. Good. I was tired of fighting things that could not. Mr. Hale, return fire. Full concentration. The same punch we threw at the rings. Let us see if that hull holds together the way ours just did. The Ardent Reach put everything she had into the disk, the single devastating concentration that had holed two walls and shattered a spear, and it struck the great hull square. And the disk shrugged it off. Not entirely. There was a flare where the fire landed, a section of the disk's edge going dark and ragged, but the disk did not come apart, did not even slow, came on through the human ship's heaviest blow, the way the Ardent Reach had come on through the Armada's volleys, and Mara understood that the easy part of the day was well and truly over. It took our best and kept coming, Hale said. Captain, that hull is in a different class. We can hurt it, but not fast, and it can hurt us faster than we can hurt it. If this turns into a straight exchange of blows, we lose. We do not have the armor to trade with that thing shot for shot. Then we do not trade with it shot for shot, Mara said. We did not beat 40,000 by trading. We beat them by being where the shot was not. The disk is bigger than us, slower than us, and it has spent its whole life being the mind, not the body. It has never had to dodge. It has never had to do anything but sit still and think. So we are going to make it move, and a thing that has never had to move is a thing that does not know how. Helm, take us in close. Right up against its hull. Inside the range where that big lance is hard to aim. In close to the thing that can crack us in one shot, Vance said. In close to the thing that can crack us in one shot from far away, Mara corrected. A weapon that big has a minimum range. A wall that big has a blind spot against a thing small enough to hug it. We are going to be the thing too close to hit. Get me under its arc, Mr. Hale, against the belly of that disk, and keep us there, and I do not care how hard you have to fly to do it. The ardent reach drove in, the disk fired again, and missed, the great lance passing where the Dreadnought had been, and not where it was, because Mara had taught her ship the one lesson the disk had never had to learn, which was how to not be there. And then the Dreadnought was inside the disk's reach, hugging the vast curve of its underside, 3.5 kilometers of human warship, pressed so close to 40 kilometers of Vernac's hull that the big lance could no longer be brought to bear. And from that close range, the ardent reach began to do the one thing she did better than anything else in the galaxy, which was to put concentrated fire into one spot, again and again, from a place the enemy could not answer. It is trying to turn, Hale reported, to bring a gun to bear on us. It is slow, Captain. It is so slow. It has never had to turn for anything in its life. Because nothing ever got this close, Mara said. Nothing ever survived long enough to get this close. Stay on its belly. Walk our fire across the same section. We are not going to crack the whole disk. We do not have to. We have to crack one part of it, and then we have to find out what is under the part we crack. Mara had wondered, all through the easy hour, where the danger really lived in a fleet like the Vernac's, because a thing that only knew one trick could not have conquered as much of the dark as the Vernac's had conquered. Now she knew. The danger had never been in the warships. The warships were disposable, and the Vernac's knew it, and spent them like coins. The danger was here, in the patient, cold mind that had let 20,000 of those coins be spent without flinching, that had hidden behind its own dying fleet, and studied the human ship the whole time, learning, while its body bled. The warships had fought without thinking. This thing did nothing but think. It had simply been waiting, all day, for the human ship to come close enough that thinking could reach it. And now the human ship was closer to it than anything had ever been, clamped to its belly, and the waiting was over for them both. The Vernac's disk did the only thing it could think to do, which was to call its body back to it. The surviving warships, the 19,000 that had been peeling away to clear the disk's path, turned and came back, racing in to pull the human ship off their mind, the way a body's hands fly up to protect its head. And for a moment it might have worked. 19,000 hulls converging on a single point is a great deal of fire, even fire as broken and uncoordinated as theirs had become. But the 19,000 were broken. They no longer drilled as one, because the field that made them one was the disk, and the disk was busy. All of its attention, and all of its strange coordinating force bent on the human ship clamped to its belly. The hands came back to protect the head, and the hands, without the head to guide them, were clumsy. They got in each other's lanes. They fired and hit each other. Some of them, racing in too fast and too frightened, struck the disk itself, friendly fire into their own mind, because the disk was no longer telling them where it was. They are hitting the disk, Vance said, half in disbelief. Their own ships are hitting the disk. The disk is so focused on us that it stopped flying them, and without it flying them, they cannot fly themselves, and now they are crashing into the one thing they came back to save. That, Mara said, is the whole war in one picture. A thing that makes itself the only mind has to do all the thinking, and a thing that has to do all the thinking cannot think about everything at once. We made it choose between thinking about us and thinking about them. It chose us, so now we have its full attention, and its body is killing itself behind our backs, and all we have to do is finish what we came under here to do. Mr. Hale, the section, crack it. Hale cracked it. The concentrated fire of the ardent reach, hammered into a single stretch of the disk's belly from a range too close to miss and too close to answer, finally broke through, and a long, ragged wound opened in the great hull, and out of the wound spilled light, a deep, cold blue glow that pulsed in a slow rhythm Mara recognized at once. Because it was the same rhythm as the field, the same beat as the drill, the heartbeat of the thing that had thought for 40,000 ships. That is its core, Hale said softly. That is the thing itself, Captain. That is what we have been fighting all day. Everything else was just the shape it wore. Hold us steady on its belly, Mr. Hale, Mara said. Whatever it does next, it does it slow, and we do everything fast. That is the whole shape of this. It is the largest, oldest, most patient thing we have ever fought, and the one thing it has never once been is quick. We are going to make this fight about speed, because speed is the one currency it does not have, and we have nothing else but speed and stubbornness we are saving for later. The core, exposed, did the thing a cornered mind does, which the body it commanded had never been able to do, because the body had no mind of its own to do it with. It spoke, not in the cold synchronizing silence it had used to run the fleet. It spoke to the ardent reach directly, on every channel at once, in a voice that the partial key rendered into words that arrived on Priya's board, slow and strange and unmistakable. It is hailing us, Captain, Priya said. Her hands were not quite steady. It is asking, the key is rough, but it is asking the same thing, over and over. It is asking how. It wants to know how one hull broke the drill. It is not threatening us. It is not demanding our surrender. It is asking us to explain ourselves. I think, Captain, I think it does not understand what happened to it, and I think not understanding is the worst thing that has ever happened to it in its life. Mara looked at the wounded disk, the cold blue core pulsing in its broken belly, 19,000 leaderless hulls colliding in the dark behind her ship, and she understood the question completely, because it was the same question the galaxy always asked, in one form or another, when it met the wrong human ship on the wrong day. How does one beat 40,000? How does the small thing break the large one? How is the arithmetic wrong? Tell it the truth, Mara said. It earned the truth. It spent 20,000 ships learning how to ask the question. The least we can do is answer it. What do I send, Captain? Mara was quiet for a moment, and then she gave the answer she had carried her whole career, the answer that was the soul of every ship she had ever served on, the answer the Vernax and everything like the Vernax could never quite believe even after it killed them. Tell it this, she said. You built one thing that could do one thing perfectly. We built a crew. You have 40,000 ships and one mind, and we have one ship and 840 minds. And every one of ours can think when the plan breaks. Because every one of ours has lived a life where the plan broke, and they had to think anyway. You never let your ships think. You did the thinking for them, so that they would never disobey, and the day your thinking failed, they had nothing. We are harder to kill than you, because there is no one place to hit us. You made yourself a single point of failure, and you called it strength. We made ourselves 840 points of stubbornness, and we called it a crew. That is how. That is the whole of how. Priya sent it, and the disk, the great wounded mind that had run a fleet of 40,000 for longer than human records ran, received the answer, and went silent. And in the silence, it did the last thing it had left to do, which was the one thing Mara had not expected, and which told her, more than anything else that day, exactly what she had been fighting. It stopped trying to kill the ardent reach. It pulled itself free of the human ship, clamped to its belly, slow and wounded and leaking cold blue light, and it turned, not toward the Dreadnought, but away from it, toward the 19,000 broken hulls of its own fleet, and it gathered them. The field came back, weaker now, flickering through the wound in its hull, but it came back, and the 19,000 hulls that had been crashing blindly into each other steadied, one by one, as the mind took them up again. The Vernax disk, dying, used the last of its strength not to strike a final blow at the thing that had beaten it, but to put its scattered body back into a shape that could run. It is reforming them, Hale said, not to fight, to withdraw. It is going to take what is left and leave. Let it, Mara said. Hold fire. All stations, hold fire. We do not shoot a thing in the back while it is carrying its wounded home. Captain, Vance said quietly, it can rebuild. A mind like that, with even a few thousand hulls left, it can drill a new fleet. If we let it go, we may be doing this again in 10 years, against a fleet that has learned from today. It will not be the same fleet, Mara said. It cannot be. We did not just beat its body. We taught its mind that the drill can fail. And a mind that knows the drill can fail can never again believe in the drill the way it did this morning. We broke the one thing it could never get back, which is its certainty. Whatever it builds next, it will build afraid. And a thing that builds afraid builds slow, and builds doubting, and second guesses itself in the moment. A fleet like that cannot afford to second guess. We have not ended the Vernax today, Mr. Vance. We have done something they will find far worse. We have made them mortal. They will spend the next 10 years discovering that they can lose, and that discovery will cost them more than any 10 years of war we could fight. The ardent reach held her fire, and the wounded disk drew its broken fleet around itself, and the great host that had come to subtract one human ship turned, at last, for the dark, slow and leaking and diminished, 19,000 hulls and one dying mind, limping away from a single dreadnought that did not fire a shot to speed them on their way. Casualties? Mara asked, the third time she had asked it, the time she finally let herself believe the answer. Ours, Captain? Vance said. Bruises. The forward armor is in bad shape from that one big lance, and we will be in dock for a month. But our casualty list is still bruises. We met 40,000 ships and a mine that ran them, and we are bringing 840 people home, every one of them, and a story the whole Reach is going to want to hear. And theirs? Hale checked the count one last time, and when he spoke there was no triumph in his voice, only the flat awe of a man reading a number he would not have believed that morning. They came with 40,000. They are leaving with 19,000 and change. They lost more than 20,000 hulls, Captain, and the only thing they have to show for it is one question they did not used to need to ask, and one answer they are never going to want to hear again. The withdrawing Vernax got 2 minutes of believing they would be allowed to leave, and then the disk tried to take the answer back. It happened the way the worst things in a battle always happen. In the moment, everyone has decided the battle is over. The wounded disk, drawing its broken fleet around it, had nearly finished gathering them, and Mara had nearly let herself stand down, when Hale's voice cut across the bridge sharp and cold. Captain, the core is spiking. The field just doubled. It is not running. It was never running. It used the withdrawal to pull every ship it has left into one place. And now it has them, all 19,000, in a tighter formation than the ring ever was, and it is feeding all of them through itself at once. Captain, I think it is going to fire the whole fleet as one weapon, one shot, everything it has left, through the core, at us. Mara understood it in an instant, and she felt, for the first time all day, the cold touch of real respect for the thing she fought. The disk had not been beaten into retreat. The disk had been pretending. It had let her believe it was carrying its wounded home. Because a thing that has watched humans all day learns that humans hold their fire for a fleeing enemy, and it had used that mercy, the very mercy Mara had granted it, as cover to gather itself for one last blow. It had turned her decency into a weapon and aimed it back at her. It was, she thought, the most human thing the Vernax had done all day, and the most dangerous. Mara felt the weight of the moment in her chest, the cold awareness that the thing she fought had just outthought her. She had granted it mercy, and it had taken her mercy in its hand and sharpened it. There was a lesson in that she would carry the rest of her life, and the lesson was not that mercy was a weakness. The lesson was that mercy given to a thing that does not understand it is not mercy at all, only an opening, and that the Vernax did not understand it, could not understand it, had no place in their whole drilled existence for the idea of a gift. They had read her open lane as a gap in her formation. They had read her held fire as a flaw in her plan. They were about to learn, in the last 30 seconds of their fleet's existence, that it had been neither. How long until it fires? Mara said. 30 seconds. Maybe less. Captain, a shot like that, channeled through 19,000 hulls in that core, our armor does not stop it. Nothing stops it. That is not a weapon. That is a verdict. Then we do not let it fire, Mara said, and her voice was the calmest it had been all day, because she had reached the place past fear, the place where there is only the next correct move. It has done what the rings did. It has made every ship it owns face inward, toward the core, to feed the shot. They are all pointed at the center again. They are all committed again. And the core is exposed, in the wound we cut. Mr. Hale, forget the fleet. Forget the disk. Every gun we have, The deepest concentration we have ever fired. Straight into that wound. Into the core. Right now. Before it finishes charging. We have one shot to reach the thing doing all the thinking, and it has very kindly stopped hiding to take it. We are still clamped to its belly, Captain. If that core goes up at this range, then we will be too close to miss, Mara said. Fire. Everything. Now. The ardent reach fired into the wound. Every gun, every battery, every launcher. The old ones and the newer ones bolted over them. 840 people pulling one trigger one last time. The whole of a human dreadnought poured into a single ragged hole in the belly of a dying god. The fire reached the core a half-second before the core finished gathering its verdict, and the cold blue heart of the Vernax, the patient mind that had run 40,000 ships and watched 20,000 of them die to keep itself hidden, took the full concentrated weight of the only ship in the galaxy that had ever gotten close enough to find it. The core came apart. It did not explode the way a reactor explodes. It came apart the way a thought comes apart, all at once and completely. The cold blue light guttering out across 40 kilometers of hull in a single beat, and with it went the field, the drill, the thing that made 19,000 ships one thing. The charge the disk had been gathering, the verdict it had been about to fire, had nowhere to go when the mind that aimed it died, and it discharged into the disk's own fleet, into the 19,000 hulls all pointed inward, all committed, all feeding a shot that no longer had a gunner. The last weapon of the Vernax fired inward, into themselves, the way the first volley had, the way everything they did came back to themselves in the end, because they had built a way of war in which the only thing they ever truly aimed at was the center, and they had never once imagined a day when the center would be the worst place to be. Mara watched the great disk go dark, and around it the broken fleet convulse one final time, and then the dark was just dark, scattered with the cooling lights of dead and dying hulls, and the field that had made the Vernax a single mind was gone, and what was left was only ships, ordinary ships, leaderless and lost. The core is dead, Captain, Hale said, very quietly. The field is gone. The survivors, they are just drifting. No formation, no coordination. They are not even trying to fight. They do not know how, without the mind. I am reading maybe 11,000 hulls still intact, and not one of them is doing anything at all. They are waiting, Captain. They are waiting for something to tell them what to do, and there is nothing left to tell them. 11,000. Mara looked at them. 11,000 warships gone, suddenly silent and aimless. Machines that had never in their lives made a decision, because the mind had made every decision for them. Now adrift in the dark with no mind, and no decision, and no idea how to make one. She had set out that morning to survive 40,000 ships. She had ended by orphaning 11,000 of them, and she found that the victory did not feel like a victory. It felt like standing in a very large, very quiet room after something enormous had stopped breathing. For a long moment the bridge was silent. 840 people listening to the absence where, an hour ago, there had been the largest fleet any of them had ever seen. Mara had been in quiet rooms after battles before. This was a different quiet. The battles she remembered had left wreckage that still burned, enemies that still fought from the ruins, a danger that took hours to fully die. This danger had died in a single beat, the instant the core went dark, and what it left behind was not the loud aftermath of a battle, but the vast still hush of a thing that had been switched off. The 11,000 did not burn, they did not fight, they simply drifted. And the drifting was worse than any wreckage, because wreckage was at least the shape of something that had tried. Captain, Vance said, orders. We could finish them. They cannot fight back. It would be clean. No, Mara said. We are not going to finish them. Look at them, Mr. Vance. There is nothing left to finish. We did not beat a fleet today. We killed a thing that thought, and we left behind 11,000 ships that never learned how. They are not a threat anymore. They are not anything anymore. They are a question with no one left to answer it. She walked to the forward viewport and looked at them with her own eyes. 11,000 running lights drifting in the void. No longer a wall, no longer a spear, no longer a single terrible mind. Just a host of orphaned machines waiting in the dark for an order that would never come. And she made the decision that she knew, even as she made it, would outlast every shot fired that day. The decision the Vernax would never have made and would never understand. "Mr. Seagal," she said, "open a channel, all of them, broad as you can. Channel open, Captain." Though I do not know if there is anyone left to hear it. The mind is gone. "There are crews on those ships," Mara said. 11,000 crews who just watched the thing that ran their whole lives die in front of them. Someone is listening. Someone is always listening. She gathered the words the way she always did before the part that mattered most, slow and certain. "Send this. You came to subtract one of us. You brought 40,000 ships and a mind to run them, and you did everything your drill told you, perfectly. And it was not enough. Because we are not a number you can take away. We are leaving now. We are not going to fire on you. You are free to drift, or to leave, or to learn, finally, how to think for yourselves, which is a thing we could have taught you long before today if you had ever once come to us with a question instead of a ring. You should have left us a way out. We are leaving you one. Use it better than you would have let us use ours." Priya sent it, and the ardent reach turned, slow and deliberate, putting her scarred prow toward open space, and her stern toward the drifting host of the Vernax. And she did not fire, and she did not gloat, and she did not wait to see what 11,000 orphan ships would do with the rest of their lives. She simply left, the way the strongest thing in a room leaves, without hurry and without a backward glance, because there was nothing behind her that could touch her, and both sides knew it. "Set course for the reach," Mara said. "Home, slow and easy. The armor will not thank us for anything sudden. And Mr. Seagal, send the full battle log ahead of us. All of it. The rings, the spear, the disc, the core, the count. Do not clean it up. Do not make it sound braver than it was. Just send the numbers, and let the numbers do the work, because the numbers are the whole story, and the whole story is the weapon." The ardent reach went home. It took 9 days, slow and limping, her forward armor a ruin from the one great lance that had touched her. And in those 9 days, the story went ahead of her, the way Mara had known it would, the way a thing like that always does. By the time the Dreadnought reached the dock at the Terran Reach, the whole of human space had heard it, and a good part of the dark beyond human space had heard it too, because Priya had sent the log broad, and the Vernax survivors had carried their own version of it home, and the two versions met somewhere in the middle of the galaxy and became one story, the way stories do. The story was this: 40,000 Vernax warships, the fleet that had never lost, the fleet that subtracted every enemy it met, surrounded a single human dreadnought and closed a perfect ring around it on a perfect schedule. And the human dreadnought did not die. It broke the ring, and broke the long ring, and broke the spear, and broke the mine that ran them all, and it walked away whole, having lost not one of its 840 crew, having traded 40,000 enemy hulls for a casualty list that read, in full, bruises. And then, at the end, with 11,000 of the enemy drifting helpless and orphaned in the dark, the human ship had opened a channel, and let them live, and told them they should have left a way out, and left them one. It was the last part that the galaxy could not stop talking about. The victory was a fact, and the galaxy had heard human victories before. But the mercy was a story, and the mercy was the thing that frightened the powerful in a way no victory could. Because a thing that wins and then kills is a thing you can understand. You can plan against it. You can decide it is a monster and hate it cleanly. But a thing that wins and then could kill and chooses not to and tells you why and leaves, that is a thing you cannot place. That is a thing that has so little to fear from you that your death is not even worth its time. The galaxy had always known that humans were dangerous. What the day at the closing ring taught it was that humans were dangerous and did not need to be. That they could afford mercy the way an empire affords a coin it does not bother to count. And there is no fear in the universe quite like the fear of a strong thing that is also, when it chooses, kind. Mara Quint did not stay for the part where the Reach wanted to make a thing of her. She let them log the battle, and she let them give the ardent Reach her month in dock, and she walked the worn plating of her bridge while the welders worked on the prow, and she thought, mostly, about the 11,000. She wondered whether any of them had learned. She wondered whether, somewhere in the dark, a Vernax crew that had watched its mind die was sitting in the silence of a ship that no longer told them what to do, and discovering, slowly and painfully and for the first time, the thing her own people had learned in their bad years and never forgotten, which was how to think when the plan breaks, how to act when no one is left to give the order, how to be a crew instead of a body. She hoped they were. It was the only thing she had given them that could ever do them any good, and she had given it to them on purpose, the way she had opened the lane on purpose, the way she had done everything that day on purpose, because purpose was the one thing the Vernax had never had, and purpose, in the end, was the whole of the difference between them. She thought, as the dock crews swarmed the rebuilt prow, of the very first number of the day, the one she had kept her eyes on while the ring closed. Not 40,000. 11 minutes. The Vernax had measured the day in the size of their fleet, and she had measured it in the time she had to work, and that, in the end, was the whole of the difference between a fleet that lost and a captain who won. A number you cannot change is a wall. A number that is running down is a chance. The Vernax had spent their whole existence counting walls. The Ardent Reach had spent the day counting chances, and there had been just enough of them, exactly enough, because there always was, for a crew that knew how to find them. The Terran Reach asked her, in the formal way it asked such things, how she had done it. 40,000 to 1, and not a man lost. They wanted a doctrine. They wanted a maneuver they could teach, a trick they could write into the manuals, and drill into the next crew and the next. Mara gave them the maneuvers, the rim running, and the perpendicular crossing and the belly hug, and they wrote them down, and she knew even as they wrote that the maneuvers were not the answer, that a fleet that learned the maneuvers, and not the reason behind them, would be just another Vernax, just another body waiting for a mind, just another thing that knew one trick and would die the day the trick stopped working. So she gave them the reason too, in the end, because someone had to, and she gave it to them in the same words she had sent the dying Corps, the words that were the soul of every ship she had ever served on. The Vernax built one thing that could do one thing perfectly, she told them. We build crews. The day the plan breaks, a Vernax has nothing, because it was never allowed to think. The day the plan breaks, a human crew is exactly where it has always lived, because the plan has been breaking on us for our whole loud short history, and we have learned to be most ourselves in the moment everything goes wrong. That is the maneuver. That is the only maneuver. Everything else is just where you point the guns. She did not think the Reach would ever truly write that part down, because it could not be drilled, and could not be measured, and the Reach liked things it could measure, but she said it anyway, for the record, so that one day a captain reading the old logs in a worse hour than this one might find it, and understand. The Ardent Reach left dock a month later, prow rebuilt, armor whole, the same heavy slab of a Dreadnought she had always been, with the same 840 aboard, all of them still alive, all of them carrying the story now, wherever the ship went. And the galaxy, which had spent a long time learning and relearning what it meant to find the wrong human ship on the wrong day, added a new line to the thing it already knew, the line that came out of the closing ring and would not stop traveling. It was not the line about the 40,000, though that line traveled too. It was the quieter line, the one the powerful repeated to each other in the dark when they wanted to be afraid in a useful way. If you ever corner one of their ships, the line went, leave it a way out. Not because mercy will move them. Mercy will not move them. They are harder than that. Leave it a way out, because the alternative is to find out what a human warship does when it has nowhere to run, and the only beings who ever found that out were 40,000 strong, and certain, and the best the galaxy had ever built, and they limped home 11,000, and orphaned and afraid, carrying one answer they had paid for in 20,000 hulls, and would spend the rest of their long lives wishing they had never learned. The Ardent Reach went on, one ship, slow and scarred and whole, into a dark that had just been reminded, one more time, of the only arithmetic that had ever mattered, which was that there is no number large enough to surround a thing that is not afraid, and the galaxy, watching her go, finally understood that it never had been the 40,000 that lost the day at the closing ring. It had been the one.